Congressman, thank you for joining us. And I want to begin by just saying that if you end up being the Democratic candidate for president, I'll be honest with you, I'd be a little bit worried as a Republican, because you make more sense than it seems like most of the people on that stage. Thank you for coming and welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me, Governor.
Let's start with one of the things that I've been impressed with. When some of your fellow Democrats say Medicare for all, we're going to give everybody health care, you've been pretty blunt in saying not quite so fast. Tell me, what's wrong with the idea of just giving everyone Medicare?
The problem I have is twofold. Number one, it takes choices away from the American people. And I think the American people want choices. And in fact, with Medicare today, our seniors have choices. They can accept Medicare, they can opt out of Medicare and get something called Medicare Advantage, or they can buy one of these supplemental plans, which so many of our seniors have. So they have three options, actually. Under the Medicare for All bill that's proposed by a lot of my competitors in this race, they take away all those choices, and it's just a government-only plan, and one size has to fit all. But the other problem I have with it, Governor, is, as you probably know from having run a state, many of the government programs don't pay enough to cover the cost of health care. So there's a lot of cross subsidies that go on, meaning Medicaid only pays about 80% of cost, Medicare pays 90% of cost, and commercial insurance pays about 120% of cost. And what that really means is if you take commercial insurance out of the mix, most hospitals in this country would close because they don't get paid enough from Medicare. So that's another big problem I have with the bill.
So you're an entrepreneur, a capitalist, a very successful one. What do you feel like in your background as a business person separates you from some of the other candidates on the stage?
Well, I'm the only person running, Governor, who's been a successful, as you said, business leader, but also served in the Congress of the United States. And I think that's the combination that we really need, because the most important thing for the American people is to make sure we keep growing the economy. And if you want to be pro-jobs and pro-worker, to some extent you have to be pro-business, and you have to actually create the environment where businesses can grow, particularly entrepreneurs. So I really understand that, and I think I bring a lot to the table in terms of that expertise. But I also rolled up my sleeves and served in the Congress for 6 years. I do think it's that experience of serving in the Congress, understanding how our federal government works, having been successful in the private sector. You know, my generation and your generation, we were so optimistic that if we worked hard and played by the rules, we'd have a shot. And that's missing in the generation of young people today. And I think it's unfortunate because they have a lot of obstacles that they're confronted with.
What's wrong with the system that guys like you don't get on the stage, who have very sound and solid ideas and a background, and then you got other people who have never been outside the public sector, never had a paycheck other than a government job in their entire lives, and they're front and center. Help me understand what's happening in your party. I'm having a hard enough time understanding why that happens in mine.
You know, we have difference of opinions in this country, and that's why we have these two political parties. And that's great. We don't want to live in a country where we agree with each other on everything. We should have the battle of ideas. But we also should roll up our sleeves every once in a while, find common ground, and get things done. And that's a big part of my platform. But as you know, having been in politics, in the last several decades, the extremes in each of these political parties have really, in my opinion, held the country hostage. Because too many Democrats and Republicans believe that half the country's entirely wrong about everything they believe. And we all know that's not true. We all have friends and people we go to church with or people we work with who are in different political parties, and we have enormous respect for them as human beings. And unfortunately, we're in a really tough time now in politics because that kind of approach does not really sell in social media. It doesn't sell that much in the media in general. And the loudest voices in the room are dominating the debate. But I still believe the Democratic Party is going to start anchoring itself in some sense of moderation. Because the number one thing among most Democrats is to defeat the president. And if you want to defeat the president, you have to be the kind of candidate who could build a big tent and be welcoming not only of progressives and moderates, but also of independents and Republicans who maybe are looking for a different direction.
Before I let you go, I got to talk about an issue that I'm deeply grateful that you're very open about. You openly talk about your faith and how that is the binding force between you and your wife. I find that refreshing, that people in public life are willing to unapologetically say, I'm a believer, I go to church, I practice my faith. Why is that important to you, and why don't we see more people who are just open, honest, and will tell us what their beliefs are.
We're Catholics. We go to church every week. We've been active in our community. We chaired Catholic charities in the Maryland, D.C. area. And it's been important for us, and it's been important for our 4 daughters. You know, my oldest daughter got married 2 weeks ago. And I have 4 daughters. My oldest is 26. And she got married, and it was a beautiful ceremony because it was done in a cathedral. So an Episcopal reverend presided formally over the marriage. But we're Catholic, and so we had a priest. And my son-in-law is Jewish, so we had a rabbi. So on the altar
all the bases
of the
there,
cathedral,
aren't you, Congressman?
right? It's almost like a joke, you know, a reverend, a priest, and a rabbi walk into a bar. But you know, it was so moving to everyone there to see this expression of faith from different perspectives, but how it wove together so beautifully in this celebration of love and marriage. And it's just a reminder, you know, how our faith can really be a light in our lives. And it's important to me.
Well, I want to say how important it is for us to have you here. Thank you. It's truly an honor. I wish more of your fellow Democratic candidates for president would come. I promise I will treat them with respect and kindness and dignity, as I hope you feel like I have you today, because
yes.
My job was not to ambush you, but to thank you and give you a forum to talk to our viewers, and I genuinely appreciate you coming to be with us. Congressman, thank you so very much.
Well, thank you, Governor.
So I say to all the other Democrats, the invitation is open. We may disagree on some issues, but you will be treated fairly and with respect on this show. I guarantee it. Now, on my Twitter account, well, maybe not, but that's a whole other thing. But by the way, you can learn more about Congressman John Delaney's campaign on his website. Go to johndelaney.com. If you want to follow him on Twitter, it's @JohnDelaney.